Marcus Chun had been working the docking bays of Kepler Station for 3 months when the Zephyrian delegation arrived. At 16, he was the youngest human on the station, having lied about his age to get the job after his parents died in a transport accident. The station administrators looked the other way because human workers were rare this far from Earth. And Marcus had proven himself capable despite his youth. The boy was hauling cargo containers when he first saw them. Zephyrians stood nearly 8 feet tall, their scaled purple skin gleaming under the harsh docklights. They moved with fluid grace that spoke of perfect muscular control and predatory instincts honed over millions of years of evolution. Each warrior wore ceremonial battle armor that bore the scars of countless conflicts across the galaxy. Captain Vextal led the delegation. His reputation preceded him through every corner of known space. The Zephyrian had single-handedly conquered 12 systems for the Galactic Federation, earning him the title of Supreme War Commander. His clawed hands had ended the lives of over 10,000 beings in personal combat. When he walked through the station corridors, even veteran Space Marines stepped aside and lowered their eyes. Marcus was struggling with a particularly heavy container when it happened. The magnetic clamps had failed, and the 2-ton cargo unit was sliding toward the edge of the loading platform. Below lay a 30-foot drop to the station's main thoroughfare, where dozens of beings moved about their daily business without thinking. Marcus lunged forward and threw his slight frame against the container, trying to stop its momentum. His boots scrambled for purchase on the smooth deck plating as he pushed with everything he had. For a moment, it looked like he might succeed. The container's slide slowed, teetering on the edge of the platform. That was when Captain Vextal rounded the corner. The Zephyrian took in the scene instantly. A human child struggling with equipment clearly beyond his capabilities, endangering innocent beings below through his incompetence. In Zephyrian culture, such failure demanded immediate correction. Their species had not conquered half the galaxy by tolerating weakness or stupidity. "Move aside, weak blood," Vextal snarled in accented standard. His massive form approached with predatory purpose. Marcus looked up, sweat dripping down his face as he continued to strain against the container. "I can handle this, sir. Just need to get the mag clamps working again." The Zephyrian's vertical pupils narrowed to slits. No inferior being spoke to him with such casual disrespect. On his homeworld, such insolence would be answered with immediate death. Here on this Federation station, he would show restraint and merely deliver a lesson in proper hierarchy. "You will learn your place," Vextal growled. He raised one massive hand and brought it down in a casual backhand across Marcus's face. The sound echoed through the docking bay like a gunshot. Marcus's head snapped to the side with sickening force, and he crumpled to the deck. Blood immediately began pooling beneath his skull as he lay motionless. His young body twisted at an unnatural angle. The container, no longer held back by Marcus's desperate effort, completed its slide and crashed into the thoroughfare below. Screams and shouts erupted as beings scrambled to avoid the falling debris. Captain Vextal stood over the fallen human, completely unmoved by what he had done. To his mind, he had delivered appropriate discipline to an insubordinate child. If the weak blood died from such a light correction, that merely proved how pathetically fragile humans were. He had encountered their species before during various Federation conflicts and had never been impressed. Station security arrived within minutes, alerted by the commotion and the emergency signals from the thoroughfare below. Chief Marta Rodriguez, a grizzled human veteran with 30 years of space station experience, took one look at the scene and felt ice form in her stomach. "What happened here?" she demanded, kneeling beside Marcus to check his vital signs. The child was incompetent and disrespectful. Vextal explained with the casual tone one might use to discuss the weather. "I delivered appropriate correction. Perhaps next time he will perform his duties properly." Rodriguez's hand found a faint pulse in Marcus's neck, but she could see the massive skull fracture beneath his blood-matted hair. Her scanner indicated severe brain trauma and internal bleeding. Without immediate medical intervention, the boy would be dead within the hour. "You've killed him," she whispered. "I have disciplined him," Vextal corrected. "His survival or death is irrelevant to me. Other station personnel were gathering now, drawn by the emergency alerts. The crowd was a mix of species Altarians with their crystalline features, insectoid Praxions, the elephant-like Borthans, and a handful of humans. All stared at the scene with various expressions of shock and horror. Dr. Sarah Kim pushed through the crowd, her medical kit already in hand. She was the station's head of emergency medicine and had seen her share of trauma cases. But when she knelt beside Marcus and began her preliminary examination, her face went pale. Multiple skull fractures, significant brain swelling, internal bleeding, she announced to Rodriguez. I need to get him to surgery immediately, but ... She looked up with tears in her eyes. The damage is extensive. Even with our best equipment, his chances are minimal. As the medical team prepared to transport Marcus, word was already spreading throughout the station. Humans were a minority in this part of space, but they were well regarded for their work ethic and adaptability. Marcus Chen was particularly well liked among the station population. The dock workers called him Little Chief because of his habit of organizing work crews and solving problems that stumped adults. Vextel watched the medical team load the unconscious boy onto a hover stretcher with complete indifference. In his mind, the matter was closed. He had delivered justice according to his species' customs, and now he would continue with his diplomatic mission. Captain Vextel, Chief Rodriguez said, her voice carefully controlled. You're under arrest for assault with intent to commit murder. Zephyrian's laugh was like grinding metal. You cannot arrest me, human. I carry diplomatic immunity. Your laws do not apply to my actions. Rodriguez's jaw clenched, but she knew he was right. The Zephyrian delegation was here under formal Federation protection. Local station authority could not touch him, regardless of what he had done. Then this matter will be referred to Federation Council, she said through gritted teeth. Where it will be dismissed, Vextel replied smoothly. The weak blood challenged proper authority through incompetence and disrespect. I responded appropriately. No Federation law was violated. As the medical team rushed Marcus toward the medical bay, Vextel turned and walked away, already dismissing the incident from his mind. He had diplomatic meetings to attend and had wasted enough time on the pathetic, human child, but something interesting began happening in the hours that followed. Word of the assault spread beyond the station through quantum communication networks. Human colonies throughout the sector received the news, and something stirred in response. Messages began flowing between Earth Command, Colonial Administration, and various human settlements. The Galactic Federation had strict non-interference policies regarding member species' internal justice systems. What Vextel had done to Marcus was perfectly legal under Zephyrian law, and since he held diplomatic status, station authority was powerless to act. But humans had their own customs regarding justice, and they were about to remind the galaxy why their species had earned respect. Despite their physical limitations. In the medical bay, Dr. Kim worked frantically to save Marcus's life. The boy's skull had been shattered in 3 places, and brain swelling was increasing rapidly. She had already performed 2 emergency surgeries, but his condition remained critical. His vitals are stabilizing, but barely, she reported to Chief Rodriguez during a brief break between procedures. The brain damage is severe. Even if he survives, there may be permanent impairment. Rodriguez nodded grimly. She had already filed her report with Federation Council and Earth Command. Now all they could do was wait and see if justice would be served. What none of them realized was that Marcus Chun was not just any human boy. His parents had been killed while on a classified mission for Earth intelligence. Their deaths had been reported as a transport accident to protect ongoing operations, but Marcus carried genetic modifications that were only beginning to manifest. The boy lying broken in the medical bay was about to become the catalyst for a conflict that would reshape how the galaxy viewed humanity. As Vextel attended his diplomatic meetings, discussing trade agreements and territorial disputes, he remained completely unaware that his casual brutality had just lit a fuse that would burn across the stars. 3 days after the assault, Marcus Chin's body began doing things that surprised even Dr. Sarah. Kim. The brain swelling that should have killed him was decreasing at an impossible rate. Damaged neural pathways were regenerating in ways that defied everything she knew about human physiology. His recovery is unprecedented, she told Chief Rodriguez during their daily briefing. The skull fractures are healing themselves. Brain tissue that was completely destroyed is somehow rebuilding. I've never seen anything like it. Rodriguez studied the medical scans with growing amazement. Could this be some kind of genetic therapy? Maybe his parents had him treated before they died. Dr. Kim shook her head. This isn't therapy. This is something built into his DNA. His cellular regeneration rate is operating at nearly 10 times normal human levels. But here's the strange part. It only activated after the trauma. Before the injury, his scans showed normal human baseline readings. What they didn't know was that Earth Command had been monitoring the situation very carefully. Admiral Sarah Harrison, Director of Colonial Defense, had been in constant communication with the station since the assault occurred. Marcus's parents had been part of Project Prometheus, a classified program designed to create humans capable of surviving in the harshest environments of deep space. The genetic modifications were dormant until triggered by life-threatening trauma. Marcus was one of only 12 children in the galaxy carrying the Prometheus genes, and this was the first time the modifications had been activated. The boy is coming online, Admiral Harrison told her staff during a secure briefing on Luna Base. All Prometheus assets are to be placed on standby. If he completes the activation sequence, we'll have our first confirmed success. Meanwhile, across human space, a different kind of activation was taking place. The news of Marcus's assault had reached every human colony, mining station, and military outpost in the sector. The images of the broken boy lying in his own blood had spread through social networks, underground communications, and official diplomatic channels. Humans were not generally considered a warrior species by galactic standards. They were valued for their adaptability, problem-solving abilities, and stubborn determination. But they were physically smaller than most species and lacked the natural weapons possessed by races like the Zephyrians. What the galaxy consistently underestimated was human loyalty to their own kind and their capacity for creative violence when pushed too far. Captain Elena Vasquez of the merchant vessel Aurora's Dream received the news while docked at Proxima Station. She had served 12 years in Earth's colonial marines before going into private shipping. And she knew Marcus personally. He had helped load cargo on her ship during several stops at Kepler Station. Change of plans, she announced to her crew. We're heading to Kepler Station? Captain, we've got a delivery contract with the Centauri Mining Consortium, her first officer protested. If we break that contract, we'll lose our shipping license. Some things are more important than money, Elena replied coldly. That boy didn't deserve what happened to him. And if the Federation won't deliver justice, then we will. Similar conversations were taking place on dozens of human ships throughout the sector. Traders, miners, explorers, and even retired military personnel began altering their routes to converge on Kepler Station. They came without central coordination, without official orders, driven only by a shared sense of justice and species loyalty. The Zephyrian delegation remained completely unaware of the gathering storm. Captain Vextile was busy negotiating territorial boundaries with the station's diplomatic corps, secure in his immunity and indifferent to the consequences of his actions. On the 4th day after the assault, Marcus Chin opened his eyes. Dr. Kim was running her evening rounds when her patient suddenly sat up in bed, moving with fluid grace that seemed impossible given his recent trauma. The medical monitors went crazy, displaying readings that made no sense. Marcus? How are you feeling? She asked cautiously. The boy turned to look at her and she gasped. His eyes had changed. What had been normal brown irises were now flecked with gold, and they seemed to hold a depth of awareness that was unsettling in someone so young. I feel different, Marcus said quietly. His voice carried new harmonics, deeper and more resonant than before. Everything is clearer now. You suffered massive head trauma, Dr. Kim explained gently. You've been unconscious for 4 days. Do you remember what happened? Marcus's expression darkened. I remember the Zephyrian striking me. I remember the pain. And I remember something awakening inside me as I fell. Before Dr. Kim could respond, Marcus stood up from the bed with movements that were too quick and too precise for someone who had been comatose for days. The medical restraints that should have held him in place snapped like paper. Marcus, you need to stay in bed. Your injuries are healed, he interrupted, pulling off the bandages wrapped around his head. Underneath, his skull showed no signs of trauma. The skin was unmarked, as if the assault had never happened. Dr. Kim stared in shock. Her scans had shown the healing progress, but seeing it with her own eyes was different. The boy standing before her was clearly no longer entirely human. What are you? She whispered. Marcus smiled, and there was something predatory in the expression. I'm what humanity becomes when we stop pretending to be weak. Outside the medical bay, alarms began sounding throughout the station. Chief Rodriguez's voice echoed over the communication system. All personnel to emergency stations. We have multiple ships approaching on aggressive vectors. Marcus tilted his head, listening to the announcement with inhuman focus. They've come for him, he said with satisfaction. Dr. Kim followed Marcus as he walked calmly through the corridors toward the main observation deck. Other beings pressed themselves against the walls as he passed, sensing something dangerous in his presence even though he appeared to be just a human teenager. The observation deck's main viewport showed an impressive sight. Nearly 30 human ships had arrived in the system and were taking up positions around Kepler Station. They weren't military vessels. Most were converted cargo haulers, mining ships, and private transports. But they had clearly been modified for combat. Bristling with improvised weapons and armor plating. Captain Vextal was already on the observation deck. His delegation gathered around him. He watched the approaching ships with amusement rather than concern. Do these pathetic humans think to threaten a Zephyrian war fleet? He laughed. I could summon ships that would vaporize this entire system. Your war fleet isn't here, Chief Rodriguez pointed out grimly. These ships are... Marcus stepped onto the observation deck, and the temperature in the room seemed to drop several degrees. Every being present turned to stare at the boy, who should have been dead or permanently disabled. Captain Vextal's amusement faded when he saw Marcus, walking under his own power. Impossible. I shattered your skull like an eggshell. You did, Marcus agreed calmly. And in doing so, you woke something up that should have stayed sleeping. The Zephyrian studied the boy with new interest. Something was different about him. The way he moved, the confidence in his posture, the strange golden flecks in his eyes. But he was still just a human child, barely reaching Vextal's chest. You think your recovery makes you special? Vextal sneered. You are still weak blood, still inferior. Marcus's smile was cold. Would you like to test that theory? Before anyone could react, Marcus moved. He crossed the 20 feet separating him from Vextal in a blur of motion that was too fast for most beings to follow. His fist connected with the Zephyrian's armored chest with a sound like thunder. Vextal was launched backward, crashing through a reinforced bulkhead and into the corridor beyond. The impact left a crater in the station's hull plating where his body struck. The observation deck fell silent, except for the groaning of twisted metal. Marcus stood in the same spot where Vextal had been, his fist still extended, completely unmarked by the contact with Zephyrian armor. That, he said calmly, was for making me miss 3 days of work. Captain Vextal pulled himself from the wreckage, his armor cracked and his pride wounded. In over 200 years of combat, no being had ever struck him with such force. The human child had hit him with the power of a military-grade plasma cannon. What are you? Vextal demanded, echoing Dr. Kim's earlier question. I'm the future, Marcus replied. And you just helped create it. The human ships outside were now broadcasting on all frequencies. Their message, simple and direct, Captain Vextal will answer for his crimes against humanity. Surrender him for trial, or we will take him by force. Station Administrator Chun, no relation to Marcus, despite the shared surname, was frantically trying to contact Federation Council. But communication arrays throughout the sector were experiencing mysterious malfunctions. Earth intelligence had been busy during the past 4 days. Captain Vextal realized with growing alarm that he was trapped on a station, surrounded by angry humans, with his fleet days away and his diplomatic immunity apparently meaningless in the face of human justice, and standing before him was a boy who had just demonstrated that humans were far more dangerous than anyone in the galaxy had suspected. The war that would reshape galactic civilization had just begun with a single punch. Captain Vextal circled Marcus with the fluid movements of a predator, but for the first time in his long military career, he felt something he had never experienced before: uncertainty. The human boy stood motionless in the center of the observation deck, hands relaxed at his sides, showing no fighting stance or defensive posture. "You struck me when I was unprepared," Vextal growled. "Face me properly, and I will show you why Zephyrians have conquered half the galaxy." Marcus tilted his head with a gesture that seemed almost curious. "You conquered worlds filled with beings who fought like you do. Strength against strength, honor against honor. Very predictable." The Zephyrian lunged forward with lightning speed, claws extended to tear through human flesh. His combat experience spanning 2 centuries guided every movement as he struck with enough force to decapitate most beings. Marcus wasn't there. The boy had moved aside at the last possible instant, allowing Vextal's claws to pass harmlessly through empty air. But he didn't just dodge. His hand shot out and gripped the Zephyrian's wrist with casual ease. "Humans don't fight honorably," Marcus said conversationally, as if discussing the weather. "We fight to win." With a twist of his wrist, Marcus redirected Vextal's momentum and sent the 8-foot warrior flying across the observation deck. The Zephyrian crashed into a bank of displays, sparks erupting as sensitive equipment was destroyed. Through the viewport, the human fleet had arranged itself in perfect formation. Each ship was exactly where it needed to be to control every approach vector to the station. It wasn't the random positioning of angry civilians, it was the precise deployment of a coordinated military operation. Admiral Sarah Harrison's voice suddenly echoed through the station's communication system. Her message was being broadcast on all frequencies, ensuring every being in the sector could hear. "Attention all Federation vessels and installations. I am Admiral Harrison of Earth Colonial Defense Command. 4 days ago, Captain Vextal of the Zephyrian Empire committed an unprovoked assault against a human civilian under Federation protection, despite multiple requests for justice through proper channels. The Federation Council has declared themselves unable to act due to diplomatic immunity." Chief Rodriguez stared at the communication panel in shock. Earth Command was officially involving themselves in what had started as a station-level incident. "Therefore," Admiral Harrison continued, "Earth Command is exercising Article 7 of the Terra Colonial Charter. When Federation law fails to protect human citizens, Earth law takes precedence. Captain Vextal is hereby declared an enemy of humanity, and all human forces are authorized to use any means necessary to apprehend him for trial." Captain Vextal pushed himself upright, his armor now heavily damaged and his confidence shaken. Article 7 was something most galactic species had dismissed as human bluster. The idea that Earth would risk war with the Federation over legal technicalities seemed absurd. "Your threats are meaningless," he snarled at Marcus. "Even if your fleet destroys this station, my government will demand satisfaction. The Zephyrian Empire will not tolerate such aggression." Marcus smiled, and the expression was terrifying on his young face. "Your government already has satisfaction. 3 hours ago, Earth Command delivered a formal apology to the Zephyrian High Council for the unfortunate accident that destroyed your main battle fleet." The observation deck fell silent. Vextal's face went pale beneath his purple scales. "That's impossible. My fleet is secure in the Rigel system, under full defensive protocols." "Was secure," Marcus corrected. "Earth intelligence has been planning this operation for 4 days. While you were attending diplomatic meetings, our ships were positioning themselves throughout the sector. Your fleet never saw the attack coming." Dr. Kim, still trying to process everything she had witnessed, spoke up hesitantly. You're saying Earth Command planned all of this? The assault on Marcus was an unexpected opportunity, Marcus interrupted. Project Prometheus has been running for 12 years, but the genetic modifications couldn't be activated safely until now. Vextal's attack provided the trauma trigger we needed. The truth was even more complex than Marcus revealed. His parents had been Earth intelligence operatives working to steal Zephyrian military technology. Their deaths had been genuine accidents, but their son carried modifications designed to create the perfect deep space operative. The attack had awakened capabilities that Earth Command had only dreamed of proving. Captain Vextal looked around the observation deck with growing desperation. The other members of his delegation were backing away from him, clearly unwilling to share his fate. His diplomatic immunity meant nothing if Earth was prepared to declare war over the matter. "You cannot do this," he said, but his voice lacked conviction. "The Federation will not allow." "The Federation will do exactly what they always do," Chief Rodriguez interrupted. "They'll form a committee to study the situation while Earth handles its own justice." Through the viewport, the human ships were moving into final position. Each vessel was broadcasting the same message: surrender, Vextal, or face the consequences. Marcus walked calmly across the observation deck until he stood directly in front of the Zephyrian warrior. Despite being less than half Vextal's size, his presence dominated the room. "Here's what's going to happen," Marcus said quietly. "You're going to surrender yourself to Chief Rodriguez. You'll be tried under Earth colonial law for assault with intent to commit murder. If you resist, my friends out there will demonstrate why humans have survived and thrived in every corner of the galaxy despite being smaller and weaker than everyone else." Vextal's pride warred with his survival instincts. He had conquered worlds and slain thousands of enemies in personal combat. Surrendering to a human child was unthinkable. "I am Captain Vextal of the Zephyrian Third Fleet. I do not surrender to inferior beings." Marcus sighed. "Elena, he says he doesn't want to surrender." "Copy that, little chief," Captain Vasquez's voice responded over the communication system. "Want us to convince him? Please do." The demonstration that followed was brief but devastating. One of the human ships, a converted mining vessel called Defiant Spirit, fired a single shot at an empty section of space near the station. But it wasn't an ordinary weapon. The projectile appeared to be a simple tungsten rod, no different from the kinetic penetrators used by military forces across the galaxy. But when it struck the abandoned cargo container floating in space, the results defied physics. Instead of punching a hole through the container, the rod somehow converted the target's mass directly into energy. The container simply ceased to exist, replaced by a brilliant flash of light that briefly outshone the system's star. "Mass conversion weapons," Dr. Kim breathed. "That's impossible. The energy requirements alone are well within human engineering capabilities," Marcus finished. "We've had 400 years to figure out how to kill things efficiently. Most species spend their time on honor, tradition, and territorial disputes. Humans spend their time making better weapons." Captain Vextal stared at the empty space where the cargo container had been. A mass conversion weapon could destroy his homeworld without leaving so much as dust behind. If humans had developed such technology, then the balance of power in the galaxy had shifted without anyone noticing. "How many ships carry these weapons?" he asked quietly. "All of them," Marcus replied. "Earth Command spent 2 centuries building a military that could fight the entire galaxy and win. We just never had a reason to demonstrate it before." The political implications were staggering. If Earth possessed weapons that could convert matter to energy, they could destroy any fleet, any planet, any civilization that threatened them. The Federation's entire power structure was built on the assumption that no single species could challenge the collective military might of the Galactic Alliance. Humans had just proven that assumption wrong. "Admiral," Harrison's voice returned to the communication system. "Captain Vextal, you have 60 seconds to surrender before we demonstrate why humans are the most dangerous species in the galaxy. Choose wisely." Vextal looked around the observation deck one final time. His delegation had abandoned him. His fleet was gone, his government was too far away to help, and standing before him was a human boy who had punched through Zephyrian armor with his bare hands. "I surrender," he said quietly. Chief Rodriguez stepped forward with restraint devices, her expression grim but satisfied. "Captain Vextel, you are under arrest for assault with intent to commit murder under Earth colonial law. You have the right to legal representation, and you will be transported to Earth for trial." As the restraints clicked into place around Vextel's wrists, Marcus walked over to the viewport and looked out at the human fleet. Each ship represented hundreds of humans who had dropped everything to seek justice for one injured boy. It was a level of species loyalty that few galactic civilizations could understand. "The interesting thing about humans," Marcus said to Dr. Kim, who was still trying to process everything she had witnessed, "is that we're not actually the strongest species or the fastest or the smartest. But we're the only species that gets more dangerous when you hurt one of us." Dr. Kim nodded slowly. "The genetic modifications? There are others like you?" 11 others, Marcus confirmed. "And after today, Earth Command will,